All right, what you're looking at here is a diagram from a book by Bernard Bars, and he's a neuropsychologist, and he's put together here a model of the human mind. But it's an information processing model, so he calls it a functional framework. It's composed of different information processing modules, and they're all hooked up in certain ways, and this is supposed to capture how the human brain processes information in the different systems and how they operate. If we look over on the left here, we see the red arrows. They represent information coming in to our nervous system from the external world. So we have light and vibrations in the air and so on, and pressure in our skin. So we have vision, hearing, and touch, and they enter the nervous system. We have regions in the brain that process that information. Those regions send output signals to other areas of the brain. So these modules here have inputs and outputs, sort of like a computer model. Let's imagine we're at a concert, right? So we're seeing the band, hearing the band, and we're feeling the earth beneath our feet. So we're standing there watching the band, we're enjoying it. If we are attending to the band, then we're having a conscious experience. We are hearing the band and seeing the band, and we're enjoying the band. We're having a band experience, and it's a good thing. Whatever the content of our conscious experience is, we're going to call that the content of our working memory system, right? And Bars has this working storage box here as having two elements. One is verbal rehearsals, so we can have in our working memory a thought of a propositional nature, like a sentence in our language. We might be having a thought and we're ruminating about it, we're thinking it over, or maybe we're trying to remember something and we repeat it, or maybe we're listening to somebody and we're trying to remember what they just said so we can understand what they're now saying, or reading the same way. The other element would be the visual spatial sketchpad. Here we can think of an example of this would be like mental imagery. So we can have little pictures in our mind, right? And we can see with our mind's eye, so to speak. That's metaphorical speak. If I ask you to imagine, right, a pink elephant, right, you can call up this image and you can inspect this image and so on. So imagery is one component of working memory, and then the verbal rehearsal system is another component. Now, if we're just watching the band, though, right, our conscious event, our conscious experience is sort of the contents of our working memory system. Now, that's all if we're attending to the band. But suppose our phone vibrates or something, right? So now our attention might be drawn to a new stimulation. And we're going to call that a bottom-up attentional capture. So our phone vibrates, and now we shift our attention from the band to our phone. Now, what does this shifting? Bars is going to call this the central executive. Many psychologists have labeled some of these systems in the brain that are sort of like the conductor of an orchestra. We'll call these the central executive systems of the brain. So the central executive is going to shift attention to the vibrating phone. So now we're no longer attending to the band. We're paying attention to the vibration. Now, if we decide to not answer our phone, our central executive can shift the attention system back to the band, so we can ignore the vibrating phone. This is one of the functions of the central executive, to steer attention in different places according to our other higher goals and desires, etc. We'll see that the central executive systems have several functions, but one major one is steering and controlling attention. If we decide to ignore the phone, that's an example of top-down voluntary attention. So we're going to decide to pay attention to the band, even though there might be some other stimuli that could be attended to. Okay, so let's see what's going on with the bottom of the diagram here. So we're watching the band, we're having a conscious experience, and if I end up remembering that event, that experience, the concert, I will have created what's called down here an autobiographical memory of the event. So all these gray boxes down here, they represent sort of long-term storage systems, stored memories, knowledge, skills. The autobiographical memory system here, that would be my memory for the concert, that I was there, I remember what happened. That's a memory with me in it, right? Autobiographical memory. Now, if I learned something about the band during the concert, then I might have entered something into what psychologists would call declarative knowledge. I've learned something new about the world, facts about the world, right? If I learned to play an instrument at the concert, I might have been developing a motor skill. And actually, it's kind of interesting how skills develop. Initially, we have to pay a lot of attention. We have to consciously attend to what we're doing. And only with a lot of practice does the skill become automatic. And we'll make this distinction a little later, the distinction between sort of a conscious, controlled processing and automatic processing. But in the beginning, when we learn a skill, we have to pay a lot of attention to it. Later, as we get really good at the task, we don't really have to spend a lot of attention or pay a lot of attention, and sometimes these skills can happen without very much attention at all. They can be automatic. So let me just say a quick word about two other of the boxes here. So linguistic and semantic. So this would be sort of like our competence in our language, right? We understand what words mean. So we have learned all kinds of words and their meanings since we were growing up. So we have brain systems dedicated to storing that semantic and linguistic information. Visual knowledge would be, we interact with objects and so we can see something and identify it. So this would be what we'll call visual knowledge. Now, towards the right of the diagram then, so we have our working storage. It's sort of a central component of the system here, the working memory system. Remember, that's whatever it is we're sort of currently thinking about or experiencing is what's in this system here. If we're attending to it, we are having a conscious experience of whatever it is we're paying attention to. Well, that system is hooked up to the action systems, the planning systems, right? And these systems then are in a position to then generate a behavior. So our behavior at any given time it can be affected by several components. What it is that we're currently thinking about or experiencing, but of course that is influenced by not only what's happening in the world, but also things that we might have learned before, right? Our stored information. So it's this integration, this retrieval of information from long-term memory systems integrated with what's going on in the world, and that integration can then be sent to the action planning systems to generate some kind of behavioral response. Now, what's not shown are some of the systems that sort of give value to different courses of action. You may have heard of the dopamine system. Every sort of a decision an animal has to make, right? It's very important to give a value to the decision or the consequences of the decision. So that's not shown here, but we can just kind of say that our decision is going to be the result of the integration of things we've learned before, what's going on in the world, and the values we give to different courses of action. So we've said that the central executive, one of its functions is to steer attention. Another of its functions is to manipulate information in working memory system and to make decisions, to integrate information about our past and our values and what's happening in the world so as to make adaptive decisions and generate adaptive behavior. There is another function of the central executive system, and that is to resist impulses. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment.